is MR found. And it's not up over here. For the news time, really good.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speaker or guest and do not necessarily reflect those of the management or staff of Radio Kingston WKNY AM 1490 FM 1079 Kingston, New York.
Hello, and welcome to the Cosmic Dispatch, a show about bodies, celestial and earthbound, time, experience, and the relationship between all of them. I'm your host, Brent Felker, stepping in for Cory Nakasue. So, full disclosure, I am not an astrologer. Although today I will play one on the radio. Now, as a Gemini sun, and possessing the largely unearned confidence of being a cis, het white man, I'm very excited to do the show today. However, have no fear, all the astrology that I speak has been written by Cory Nakasue, and I will let you know when I speak as myself so that you can keep an extra large grain of salt handy. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Happy April. We have a full moon show for you today in honor of this week's full moon on Libra, in Libra on the 6th, which means we'll be joined by the actual astrologer, Mandy Sheeler, in a little bit with her full moon report. Now, before we bring Mandy on, we're going to check in with this week's astro weather. And before we do that, I just want to remind you that you can share your astrological experiences and musings, ask questions, give us show and guest recommendations by emailing us at thecosmicdispatch@gmail.com. And you can stay up to date with all of the Cosmic Dispatch content on our Instagram. Now, if you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a project you'd like to promote, let us know. Mandy Sheeler will be on the other end to collect your info and questions, and you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, which includes monthly horoscopes, moon reports, bonus content, and information about workshops and consultation schedules. And because we're in this new calendar month, let's pan out first, and we'll get a bird's eye view of April. So first, I'm going to share the monthly overview that Cory Nakasue wrote for Chronogram magazine. Chronogram is available online and on shelves now. And note that the byline in this month's issue is a misprint and incorrect. So it is still Cory providing your monthly horoscopes in that magazine. And you can find those monthly horoscopes in addition to what I'm about to read in Chronogram this month. So the title for the April monthly overview is Wait for It. And that's the actual title. You don't have to wait for it. The title is Wait for It. So in the beginning of April, it brings the middle of Aries season. So all of that energy that we bottled up over the winter is now ready to explode into one hearty push to make something, anything, happen. Aries isn't so concerned about the results of its actions so long as there is action. Even though Mercury moves into slower moving Taurus on the 3rd, it's no match for the explosive energy that's possible around the 11th as the Sun and Jupiter conjoin in Aries. Venus also has a spring in her step as she moves into fleet-footed Gemini. This month's full moon in Libra on the 6th may give us a little smack on the wrist if we've overstepped our bounds in all of our excitement. That's more of a love tap than a reprimand. That Libra influence is just reminding us that if we move too fast or forcefully, someone might get hurt. April is also host to an extremely rare hybrid solar eclipse in Aries on April 20th. A hybrid solar eclipse combines an annular and total solar eclipse, where the former becomes the latter and then usually reverts back. So this event symbolizes the month so perfectly, as we have signals to run out the door and then signals to go back home. In fact, on the day of the premature weirdo eclipse in Just Do It Aries, the sun enters, wait for it, Taurus. To add to the conflicting forward-backward shenanigans, Mercury stations retrograde in Taurus on the 21st. So this month is a teaser for sure. It's like watching a trailer for a movie that you cannot wait to see and then finding out it won't be released until next year. So Netflix reruns it is. Or maybe we could learn to savor excitement, relish anticipation, and use patience as a way to extend our enjoyment. Okay, so let's dive now into this week's astrology. This week is a big week for Mercury, and I think it's a tough and critical week for Mercury. So tomorrow, April 3rd, Mercury moves into Taurus and the pace slows down. We might be interested more in reflection, consideration, delightfully rolling things around in our minds. We might feel more oriented to practical considerations and thinking and talking about things that bring us pleasure. The mental processes are less excited or rushed, but right when Mercury enters Taurus, it makes a square to Pluto, which is newly in Aquarius. So when Mercury and Pluto make a square aspect, things get very heavy, maybe even compulsive or obsessive. And this is a fixed square with Taurus and Aquarius. So this could feel like trying to desperately hold on to information, trying to bury information or dig up something dirty. It all smacks of revelations and using secrets to hold power and trying to funnel the mind into information rabbit holes. And this could also be straight up mind control. Pluto would like to somehow break up any tendencies towards mental stagnation that Mercury is experiencing. This might be big news. This might be a big news week. And I know, what does that even mean anymore? But this week looks relatively big. And then, on the 5th, Mercury makes a sextile to Saturn, which offers some stability. But more importantly, on the 5th, Mercury enters its retrograde shadow. Whatever stories that come up for you or the collective around this time are part of a larger Mercury process that will be reviewed during Mercury's retrograde, which begins on the 20th. On the 6th, the same day as the full moon, Mercury conjoins the North Node, aka the Dragon's Head. This is a place of intensity, growth, and hunger. With Mercury there, we could have this ravenous desire to control through information and communication. This looks like peak mental stubbornness, especially in regards to controlling the pace of something, withholding or wanting to emphasize mental movement. But in the sign of Taurus, it gets inverted and invested. And that is not typical behavior for Mercury. So I'm going to take off my Cory hat now and be Brent. And as Brent, I have Mercury in Gemini natally. And in my chart, it's conjunct the South Node. So it's kind of the antithesis of this upcoming transit. And as far as how my Mercury placement expresses itself, I have found a lot of overlap with symptoms of ADD, or attention deficit disorder. Now, Cory has asked me to expand on this a bit, and her exact words were, "say some things," which, as somebody with Mercury in Gemini, is both exactly what I want to hear and a terrifying prospect. And the rest of the show could just be me saying things. So, ironically, maybe I can use the container of discussing ADD so as not to stray too far into the weeds. I recently read a book. It's called Scattered Minds, and it's by Dr. Gabor Mate. And we've all probably taken online quizzes or seen articles or lists, and they purport to kind of classify behaviors as symptoms, right? You've all seen these kind of quizzes online and these lists. You may have OCD, you may have this if you exhibit these, and they're typically incredibly vague. Just a vague list of things that everybody can kind of slot themselves into, and we can put ourselves in whatever category we wish. I've seen this also done in, very poorly done pop astrology. It's the same kind of vague platitudes that everybody's like, oh, it applies to me, if you want it to. But this particular book, Scattered Minds, it really laid out how much of how I interact with others and how I deal with difficult situations in such a detailed and specific way that I was able to really look and redefine my behavior and view it through this lens of attention deficit disorder. I really recommend this book to anyone who has ADD or someone who has ADD in their lives or someone who suspects that they may have ADD. I have not been officially diagnosed, although many have, and that's a subject that this book addresses. Why has the diagnoses of ADD been skyrocketing over the past couple of decades? Is it because we are medicalizing what is normally typical behavior, particularly in children? Or is it an increase in a very real phenomenon that's being recorded? So one thing I love about astrology, and something I hear from Cory very often, is that we all share the same energies, right? Mercury is somewhere in your chart. We all have access to that Mercurial energy. And how it expresses itself is partly a function of the material circumstances, environment, family, social groups, financial, etc., that we are in. And Dr. Mate posits that the environment itself, this neoliberal capitalist environment we find ourselves living through, is especially conducive to creating folks who suffer from ADD. Okay, so in typical Gemini fashion, I've now talked about this topic without really saying anything about me. So much for staying out of the weeds. So coming back to what I was asked to talk about, some of the specific ways that this behavior can manifest itself in me is a kind of all or nothing focus. I work as a graphic designer for an investment bank, creating PowerPoint slides, which is not as exciting as it may sound. And depending on the task at hand, I can get lost if given vague directions, and it will take me twice as long to accomplish something. Wander away, I grab a snack, I can't focus on it because I don't know what I'm supposed to get to. On the other hand, I can get lost in a very different way if I'm given a very specific endpoint. So I have where I need to go, and I have to figure out how to get there. And that kind of fires everything up. And I can become then hyper-focused to the exclusion of everything around me. And this also manifests in how I learn. And school is very difficult for me in a lot of ways because, following a set course or just trying to learn something in general, I end up losing focus. I give up, I go away, never finishes. If I have to accomplish something specific, if I have a problem that I need to solve, then I can dive in and not get distracted for the most part, for pretty much as long as it takes. And that's how I've learned a lot of things in my life, especially, practical skills and things like that. What it does tend to mean, though, is that I end up with these kind of very specific ways of doing things or getting to things that aren't necessarily applicable in the broader sense. So it will be really interesting, I think, to work with this kind of slower moving, back spinning, receptive Mercury. Mercury in Taurus is an embodied Mercury. And we'll see if that strengthens certain aspects of how I work within my Gemini and Virgo aspects. So all told, Mercury is going to be in Taurus for a little over 2 months because of the retrograde, as opposed to the usual 6 weeks. So we're going to take a short break now. And when we come back, we'll have the full moon report with Mandy Sheeler.
What does community radio mean to you?
Unknown, the spontaneity, finding out something that I had no idea that was right in my backyard just by listening to the radio. And that happens in Radio Kingston a lot.
Radio Kingston.
Many voices, one community.
Hi, I'm Christine Hine from People's Place. Volunteers are the life force of everything we do. Are you a social person? Can you lift 15 to 25 pounds? We could use your help with the donations to the thrift store. Or maybe you'd like to help set up classes or find out how to share your special skill at our Wellness Empowerment Center. Do you have carpentry or basic repair skills? We could use your help at the whole facility. Or maybe you'd like to serve food at the cafe. And if you're bilingual, we could use your help everywhere. For more information, stop in and visit us at 17 St. James Street or click the volunteer button at peoplesplace.org.
Radio Kingston. Many voices.
Many voices.
Many voices.
One community.
Hi, I'm Malcolm Byrne. Join me Sunday nights from 8 till 10 on The Long Way Around. I like having people on the show who get to the heart of uncomfortable truths.
You know, it's so true in 1789 and so true today. The idea that the poor have a right to the law is revolutionary.
And the only people, of course, who see war are the people who are in war because the images are so sanitized. If we ever actually saw war, we wouldn't be able to wage it.
The music of art and the art of conversation.
I think so much of singing is you're responding to what you're hearing.
The Long Way Around, Sunday nights from 8 till 10, here on Radio Kingston, AM 1490, FM 1079, or anytime at radiokingston.org.
As part of their music fan series, the Rosendale Theater is proud to present a screening of Little Richard, I Am Everything, Tuesday, April 11th. Directed by Lisa Cortez, Little Richard, I Am Everything is a documentary that sheds light on the true story of Little Richard, and it does not flinch from discussing the racist music history, his gay identity, and his struggle with the religious roots. Tickets are $10 for the general public and $6 for theater members. This documentary is not rated and will screen for one night only. Little Richard, I Am Everything, Tuesday, April 11th at 7 p.m. at the Rosendale Theater, 408 Main Street in Rosendale. For tickets, a trailer, and more information, rosendaletheater.org. You're listening to The Cosmic Dispatch. I'm Brent Felker, subbing in for Cory Nakasue. And with me today is astrology Mandy Sheeler. Hi, Mandy. How's it going?
Hi, Brent. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. In full disclosure, I had a little bit of a panic attack when we first started the show.
Me too.
And so I had a little trouble getting the words out, as it happens to me. But that's fine. I'm through it now, and we're into the Gemini, the talking back and forth part, which I'm much more comfortable with.
We can do this.
We can do this.
Yeah.
For people who may be new to the show, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your work.
Absolutely. So my name's Mandy Sheeler. I'm an astrologer based here in Kansas City, Missouri. I have a private one-on-one consulting practice, as well as title of Keeper of the Questions / producer of the podcast version of the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm also a resident astrologer at the St. Louisan, where I write monthly moon forecasts and other astrology-related articles. And because I too am Gemini, I am also many things. And something else I do is I'm a homeschooling parent. So I've actually infused our homeschooling practices with astrology information from my child's chart and mine. And lately I've been finding a lot of joy in connecting with other parents in that way. So all of this info, show notes, website, mandysheeler.com. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
It's
And if we can put the book that I mentioned on the show notes as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought
It's a
that
wonderful
up.
book. Yeah.
I wrote that down. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You didn't write the book. You wrote the title down.
You know, I didn't.
Not sure.
I didn't.
Your
Not
your
yet.
your pseudonym is not Dr. Gabor Mate.
Not this lifetime.
All right, that's good to know. So, Mandy, like me, you have Mercury in Gemini.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling about Mercury's upcoming transition into Taurus?
So I'm looking forward to it. And I say that knowing that soon it's going to square Pluto, as well as retrograde. And Brent, I'm excited. I want to pick your brain a little bit about Mercury retrograde. Mercury is my chart ruler and your chart ruler. And by its nature, it's just a really quick moving planet, and it's always kind of seemingly on the move. So by its nature, it just doesn't spend time in one place. And when Mercury transits Taurus, it's a little bit more stable, methodical, doesn't move so fast. So I think it'll kind of bring a little bit of seriousness to some conversations, and just encourage us to be a little bit more deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
What are
Yeah,
your-
and something
yeah.
that Cory mentioned in her notes about Mercury and Taurus being an embodied Mercury, which I think is a really great way of framing it and looking at it through that lens, because Mercury is so heady and airy and, like I said, flitting about from here to there. One of the reasons it can move so fast is because it never really fully lands, and Taurus really bringing that grounding energy. Like I mean, I can see how they are somewhat diametrically opposed in that, but I also think that it can provide a really wonderful foundation for what Mercury does well, which is navigating those problems and figuring out stuff, and playing around with stuff. And Taurus, in my mind, and again, I am not an astrologer, so if I say something and it's totally off base, please call me out so that we're
No,
not spreading misinformation. But when I
got
think
it.
of Taurus, I think of there's the stubbornness, but there's also this kind of indulgence to it, and this wanting to kind of sit and wallow, not in like wallow in misery, but kind of like wallow in the cool mud of the earth. And Mercury can provide a little bit of motion to that. So they can play off each other, but I think that they can reinforce certain aspects of each other and provide. Taurus can get a little bit of motion, and Mercury can get a little bit of grounding.
Absolutely. And when I was coming up with my own show notes, I was thinking about the fact that you and I both have Gemini and Taurus going on in our charts. And so I think we live with that.
Yeah. And I have I feel like kind of bridging the two. I have a Virgo rising.
Same.
So we have that bridge of Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, but also an earth sign. And so when we have those push and pull moments, I think both of us kind of go into the Virgo place of, okay, well, how can I serve somebody else? Like I don't know what to do here. How can I put the focus on somebody else and help them materially? And I find that as a go-to place that I end up. Even if when I go to that place trying to figure out how to do something and help, I end up spinning my wheels and going down a bunch of rabbit holes and not accomplishing anything. But
because Gemini.
because Gemini.
His Gemini brain.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, go ahead.
You have a question?
No, where do we go next, Gemini mind? Where are we?
We can do your full moon report.
Yeah.
You got all that ready to go.
I do.
Yeah, let's do that. And then we can either ask each other some questions that come up and talk about that, or I believe you, as the keeper of the questions, you have some audience questions as well.
I have all the questions, Brent.
I can offer uninformed opinions on, and you can actually answer. But let's start with the full moon report and go from there.
Perfect. So as you mentioned at the start of the show, this full moon is going to take place in the sign of Libra. A little bit about full moons, and we touch on this, I think, in each show, but just in case this is anyone's first time joining us, each month the full moon marks a crescendo or moment of completion in some storyline. There's been a slow build in some area of life over the last 18 months, and at this moment is a we're at a culmination in that story. It's as if the show is over and the lights are on, the curtain's up, and we're able to see into all the nooks and crannies of our psyche. This month's highlighted topic are relationships, both with ourselves and with others. So this month's full moon is highlighting the Libra and Aries axis of our natal charts. And this is the territory of self-assertion, compromise, self and other. It's me and my relationship to you. Aries is the individual and Libra is the relationships that individuals are involved in. And I would like to make a note of distinction that Libra is not limited to the person that we're in relationship with, but we're actually looking at relationships as their own thing here. On a deeper level, Libra rules over the fabric or material that our relationships are made up of. So Aries reminds us that the individuals involved in any relationships are just as important as the relationship, and there would be no we without me. So the moon is in the second decan of Libra, and this is a very judicious space for the moon to be. The moon here places great value on honoring boundaries and structures. Generally speaking, Libra is willing to compromise in order to maintain harmony and balance. Libra is the equalizer, and as the symbol of the scale suggests, it seeks justice and equity. Libra not only seeks harmonious balance between two things, but it also serves as the container that represents both sides. It's the intellectual awareness or the agreement and understanding between two people. This month's full moon's proximity to asteroid Chiron and Jupiter says to me that there will be yet another momentary expansion around some sort of personal wound. Whatever our Chiron story may be, let us be reminded that our wounds don't have to be what hold us back. This is also the perfect time to check in with how our deepest wounds may be informing or influencing our relationships. And our relationship with ourselves is included in this. Under the influence of this transit, you may feel the urge to let go of relationships that offer little to no value to your life, make you feel restricted, or make you compromise too much on your end. Because Jupiter is so close to the sun at this time, you may find yourself struggling to go where you normally go to get a boost of self-confidence or to find reassurance. Your faith may feel a little out of touch, and you may find yourself struggling to feel optimistic. If you feel out of touch in some way, reach out to what's right in front of you to help inform your next move. On a more personal note, this full moon has kind of been a bit of an identity crisis for me. I've found myself asking a lot of questions about who am I now? What have I been growing into? Who am I continuing to grow into? What am I in relationship with? And yeah, it's been a little overwhelming, but these are the things that full moons ask us to do, I suppose.
Yeah, and as you were saying, the relationship with yourself being
right.
the key focus here.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the Aries side of of all of this Libra thing. Yeah. So there's currently a lot of energy and desire and towards action for something new, but it doesn't quite feel like this new thing is established. And so in conversations I'm having with others, it sounds like a lot of individuating from what has been. And there's this continued frustration around oppressive and restrictive relationships or structures. And then the lack of faith that comes with those crisis of consciousness. Yeah, I generally share full moon prompts too, Brent. I'm happy to go into those. I'm also happy to, those are all online at the St. Louisan. And again, we'll have links for all of this stuff. I'm happy to go into some of those, or if you want, we can Gemini, we can Mercury.
I'm curious to hear the prompts.
You want to hear some prompts? Yeah. So these are, go ahead.
No, I was just saying maybe that'll spark some convo.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. So I do these prompts for every report, and they're just meant to kind of serve as something to contemplate, journal, meditation, inspire conversation. So if we end up doing that, that would be the perfect use. of this. So the first prompt is, where do you garner confidence? So where, when you don't know what's going on or where to go next, where do you turn to kind of feel comfortable and confident moving forward? When was the last time that you did something for the first time? Were you better at it or worse than you expected to be? Number 3 is add something beautiful to your space. Libra is, it's the interior designer. It's the aesthetic sign of the zodiac. So zhuzh up your space. Plus it's springtime, like officially. It's like sunny here, so it feels springy. Spring clean, add some beauties to your space. 4th, think back to the new moon in Libra on October 6th, 2021. So this is that 18-month story that I was talking about. There was something initiated back in October of 21, and might be a good time to check in and see how that story is going. What moment of culmination are you experiencing around that? And then the last prompt, what or who do I need to sever from my life in order to restore balance and harmony?
Whoa, that's some spring cleaning.
That's spring cleaning.
Indeed. I'm trying to think back to October 2021, and I think I'll probably have to look at a calendar and
Oh
see.
yeah.
And then I'll just be like, you had a random meeting, and I don't know, it won't
And
spark it.
from that meeting, you ended up being on the show.
Right. And here I am, the culmination of everything that started that 18 months ago.
Here it
I
is.
am, Radio Kingston on a show. Also a beautiful sunny day here, though not quite as warm as it has been. Yesterday was a gorgeous, springy, almost summery day. And we're back into the 40s again today. But yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
It is. And same here. So today is it's not quite 78, but oh wow, it's 76.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Yeah.
Spring is here.
Be pool time soon.
Yeah.
The one of the prompts that you mentioned, I think it was the third one, was about trying. When's the last time you tried something new?
Yeah.
Is that the right number? The third one?
That was the second one, but I didn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that as a Gemini, I'm always itching to try something new. And I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about how my Mercury in Gemini presents itself, where when I have something new to try or to learn or to figure out, then I can call upon is too intentional. I fall into that hyper focus. And can really go down that path whenever I try something new. What always gets me though is when I feel like I've not mastered it, but done enough to say I can do it, and then I lose interest, and so I end up not really truly mastering anything. Like it's good enough. It's good enough. I get it, and then I kind of move on. So for me, definitely trying something new is not the hard part. The hard part is that consistency, and forming habits around it.
Which my Gemini brain is going in a million different directions. Something I think a lot about is we also have this Virgo rising thing, and Virgo can create this like searing laser focus. So that's probably even maybe a little bit of what you're tapping into when you're doing that hyper fixated thing. And I think I'm thinking about the what is it, jack of all trades, master of none thing, that the typical kind of Gemini thing. But I'd push back on that a little bit to say that, like, yes, but my network is also big enough to be able to call on the expert.
That's a good point.
I think that's, yeah, because, we are very airy and we are very chatty, and I loved Cory's, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Say some things, because we can. and with that comes, this idea of, I don't necessarily have to be the master, but if I know the master,
Yeah, how that's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to, because I mean, for me too, and speaking of the kind of the Gemini flitting around, not landing anywhere, not having that grounding, um, becoming a master at something means giving up being okay at something else, because I spent so much time mastering this one thing and being amazing at it. And then I don't get to be pretty good at a bunch of other things. And that's a trade-off that I'm okay with. I like to be pretty good at a lot of things. And something you said that made me think of maybe an example of kind of a Taurus, Gemini, Virgo all coming together.
Yeah.
So the work I do is from home. I'm very privileged to be able to work from home. And kind of marking the day, I wanted to create a bit of a structure, because if I don't have a structure, I'll forget to eat. I won't, or I'll just wander around and eat the whole time. It can go in a lot of different directions. So what I did is we have vinyl. We started, collecting vinyl a few years ago. Got a bunch from our parents because they didn't want any more. And I now listen to 8 records per shift. So I'll put on a record, and I'll have to get up and I'll have to flip it, and it creates these kind of marked times for my day. So if I do get distracted, if I do kind of fall into a rabbit hole of going off to a place, the most I'll have is like 20 minutes before I'm forced to get up, perform a physical action, and then I can kind of use that as a reset. And this was something that came from the book that I mentioned about, a strategy to work with, symptoms of attention deficit disorder, and having that kind of built-in reset that has a physical component. Because I could set an alarm, but it's too easy to just hit, repeat or snooze on my phone. If I actually have to physically get up and do that. But where I feel like kind of the Virgo comes in, the organizational aspect of it, is I have to pick which 8 albums I'm going to listen to on that day. And I do this by creating playlists that have all of the records that we own, so that over the course of however long it takes, I will listen to every single record that we own one time and then start again. And you had mentioned before, kind of going, where do you go when you need to kind of reset, when you're feeling a little lost? I'll go to a spreadsheet and I'll try to organize all of our records into playlists of 8 based on a theme. And I'm not allowed to repeat a theme, and I'm not allowed to, there's a lot of little rules and stuff.
Sure.
I find it very comforting.
I love it.
Love the process of it. And I'll just sit there and just make little organize everything and structure it and get it in place. And it feels very satisfying to then just go back and look at it if I'm feeling a little unmoored.
I love it. That's so Gemini, Virgo brain. But even Taurus, yeah, like you were saying, that you have this embodied practice that really forces you to stay on schedule. I can tell you, I do the timer thing. I have a watch and like alarms on my, and you're right, it's so easy to just snooze, whatever, restart it, whatever I'm feeling in the moment. But to have that, like, physically, I have to get up from my chair, I have to walk over to the record player, I have to find on my list which one is next or where I'm at in my day. I love that, Brent. That's
got the reminder of the needle hitting the end of the groove, and a little
you're gonna get up.
You have to get up. Whatever you're doing, stop it and address this situation. And music for me is something that I really feel. And so for me, it's very kind of torial.
Taurian.
Tauranic.
Oh, I like that.
Like that. Experience for me to have that, and a song comes on and I'm just there, I'm in the screen doing my design and just singing loudly and drumming on the desk and annoying Cory elsewhere in the house. But it's something that I really feel speaks to all 3 of those. So Yeah, there's the physical aspect, there's the mental aspect, that it's actually trying to contain aspects of Gemini and using this kind of Virgo super ego structure on top of it.
Yeah. Are you sure you're not an astrologer, Brent? You know
I-
some things.
I've
You
been
just a little bit, right?
I'm very astrology adjacent.
Fair enough.
I think
That's fair.
that I'm never going to be a master astrologer, but like I get some stuff, and
You
I'm
know something.
I know enough. I know enough to pretend and yeah, steer people in the wrong direction.
You're doing great so far.
Well, do you want to take our promo break now, and when we come back, maybe we can hit up some audience questions, if you'd like,
Yeah.
or anything else you'd like to talk about. If there's something else you'd like to talk about, bring it up then. But we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll be Mandy and I will continue to have our little discourse and answer some questions.
Underwriting at Radio Kingston fuels our community fund, which helps support Kingston community members in immediate need of financial assistance and supports other community initiatives. For more information about supporting the community fund, email underwriting@radiokingston.org.
Hi, this is Lara Hope from O Positive. Submissions are open now through May 1st for the 13th annual O Positive Festival of Art, Music, and Wellness, which takes place October 6th through the 8th. We're seeking musicians, artists, and writers in all genres, mediums, and modalities. Accepted artists, bands, and writers will receive health and wellness care in our artist clinic, which is staffed by volunteer providers. We call this exchange the art of medicine for the medicine of art. The theme for the O Positive Festival this year is forward. When we consider progress, we think of it as forward movement towards a destination or towards a better, more complete ideal. We may look back, but we move forward. We can't wait to review your submissions. Apply by May 1st at opositivefestival.org/Kingston.
Hi, I'm Blake File. Join me Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. for The File. Socially, politically, economically, environmentally, and spiritually, our progress depends on intergenerational dialogues.
Because so much about modern life, it's pinballing our physiology all over the place.
I could almost feed that text in and have the relationship I want with my mother.
I just tried to fill out this magical world purely for my own delight.
And really great music. That's The File, Tuesday nights at 10 here on Radio Kingston, AM 1490, FM 1079, and anytime at radiokingston.org.
You're listening to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm Brent Felker, subbing in for Cory Nakasue. With me today is astrologer Mandy Sheeler, and we're gonna get some astrology questions coming in. So, no, Cory usually is the one answering the questions, but today Mandy is going to be answering the questions and asking them, because I'll have them. But who says all questions even need to be answered? Maybe there are questions that just need to be pondered and discussed, which, since we've got our Mercury Gemini going strong in the studio today, is maybe exactly what happens. But we'll see if we wind our way around to an answer. So take it away, Mandy. What have we got on tap?
Sure. So I pulled two questions that were very Gemini Mercurial to stay on theme for the show. So the first question is, when getting to know someone, what planet do you look at in their charts to get clues about their communication style? So in one word, I would say Mercury. Mercury in our natal charts represents not only how we process and gather information, but it also gives us clues as to how we communicate and socialize. The sign, house, and aspects from a natal Mercury or to a natal Mercury will also give us further clues as to how Mercury is expressing in a native's chart. For example, someone with a Virgo Mercury may take a little more time to note kind of the finer details or wait until they have like the perfect thought or the perfect idea before saying something out loud. Whereas, as we know, Brent, someone with Gemini Mercury may say the first thing that comes to mind. Mercury and Gemini is just the archetypal conversationalist. we can, yeah. So as we've talked about, I have Mercury and Gemini. And one of the things that I notice about myself is that I have conversations going through text, email, Instagram, and Discord all over the place, all at the same time. And I have quite a few Gemini friends. And what I think is just very symbolic of our relationship and just a Gemini brain is we've got like on Discord, we talk about book club. On Instagram, we just talk about random stuff, and then we get a little more personal and like connective through our text messaging and emails. But it's like the same people, but we just have all of these random containers that we have different conversations in. And so this very much differs from, say, somebody with a Taurus Mercury. Someone with Mercury and Taurus may have kind of one preferred method of communication, and they may struggle to juggle multiple conversations at once. They may follow a little bit more of a plan or a dedicated path to learning something or gathering information. And they may have a trusted list of resources that they turn to before investigating any new resources. They kind of tend to have their minds made up and stick to what they know, which again differs from a Gemini mind who is kind of constantly on the quest for information, and depending on whatever information we learn, we may change our minds. And to people on the outside, this can seem like it came out of nowhere, like we're just making choices on a whim, and maybe we are, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong. I have one more example of a Mercury, a Leo Mercury. Leo and Mercury is a very fun person to watch tell stories because they're so dramatic and they've got their hands going and they're using colorful language. And they're really a little more likely to put emphasis on kind of like the juice of the story or the drama of the story versus the Virgo Mercury person's going to be like, no, these are the details. This is the data. So yeah, that's what'd you say, Brent? Did you say something?
We can do Mergo.
Mergo.
Let's just shorten it all down.
It's not really like a Mercury / Gemini show if we don't make up words. And I think we've made up 2 so far. So
yeah, I can't even remember it. It doesn't matter. We've moved on. Tauronian, Turanian.
Torontic or something. I forget what.
See, it doesn't matter. We've already moved on.
It's over.
That's really interesting. And yeah, speaking also as Mercury and Gemini, one of the things that I've noticed is I'm very reticent to communicate in a way that is fixed. So I will talk to anybody, anytime, chatting, all that stuff, because it's ephemeral, right? I can say things and then it just kind of floats away, and I can obsess about them later, but that's fine. But what I don't like doing is write. I don't like posting on, I mean, like I have very little social media presence in the past several years. I really don't like posting because it's there. It's fixed.
Yeah.
I can no longer change it and move it around. And it's not that I'm that I don't want to get pinned down in that way, but it just feels, it feels kind of antithetical to the way that I like to communicate, which is in a very kind of free flowing way. So yeah, so we both have that, but we express it in very, very different ways, which is interesting.
That said, I I joke that either I'm going to post something with like full of typos, or I'm not going to post it at all because I'm going to overthink it and overanalyze.
Yeah, I will obsess over if I get derailed in the writing of a message or an email, I will obsess over it until it's too late. Like weeks have gone by and I'm like, it's still maybe, and if I don't just send it right away, it's gonna
Yeah, and there's gonna be typos, and I apologize, but now I'm saying that's how you know I wrote it, and I didn't send it through like Chat GPT or something.
Right. Well, eventually the AI will get there. It'll put in just the requisite amount of typos to,
appear.
Yeah, exactly. And then it can even start mimicking individuals' typos, because we all have our little picadillos that we do. And those can, those can be tracked online. And it's like a little signature for you.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't even gone there yet, Brent. That just got really deep in my brain. I think that maybe
Oh, go on.
maybe that like that's the speaking thing. Like we just
Yeah,
just pass down stories and things through
oral tradition. It's coming back in a big
It's
way.
coming right.
You heard it here first. We're going back to oral tradition. Write nothing down.
That said, should we get back to the notes that I wrote about the next question?
Sure. What's our next question, Mandy?
Our next question is, how would you suggest getting to know somebody with a Gemini moon? I thought this was a really fun question because my kiddo has a Gemini moon. And one thing I've noticed about Gemini moon people is that they are highly inquisitive and they like to multitask. Multitasking allows them to kind of keep their minds active, which is likely where they feel most comfortable. If things are moving too slow, they may lose interest. They seem to depend on knowing as much as possible as they can about the world around them to kind of help them inform their internal world. People with Gemini moon tend to crave witty conversation. They find joy in sharing and gathering information, and they may show that they care by doing the research on your behalf. Or, hey, I heard you were looking for a plumber recommendation. They're going to be the ones that are going to show that they care about you by offering up who they have in their own network. If you're wanting to charm a Gemini moon person, I would say play games, ask open-ended questions. Word games are really popular among Gemini mind people. And obviously things like Scrabble come to mind, but also fun things like Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity. Any sort of like conversational, fast-paced, witty, quick kind of game. Gemini is a dual-bodied sign, so it may resist the idea of monotasking, which is kind of the opposite of the energy that we're heading into as Mercury ingresses into Taurus. It's important to keep in mind that information and mental stimulation is important for a Gemini moon's emotional well-being. This person may also need freedom and have lots of different friend groups or need to have access to a variety of people to converse with. With that in mind, they may also need to have someone close to them to act as a sounding board. And they may actually, and Brent, this was something I was going to ask you about because I don't have Gemini moon, but I have a lot of Gemini. And one of the things that I've noticed about myself is I have to kind of talk things through in order to really be able to process it. So my partner is so great. he just sits there and lets me kind of talk. And he'll ask, do you want me to interject or say anything or offer any advice or opinions? But I notice if I can speak it, I'm able to kind of process it a little bit better.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Not so much for me. I'm very internal when it comes to that kind of stuff. And whether that's something, from my natal chart, or if that's something from how I grew up and just kind of spending a lot of time on my own in, books and fantasy worlds and things like that. And now my go-to is to when I process is I need to step back from everybody. I think for me, the issue I have around people, even though I love to have that experience, is I have a hard time separating other people's thoughts and desires from my own. And so it can be hard to think around people with, for me, to think around people with really strong personalities. And I don't know if that's an aspect of my Virgo wanting to serve. But if somebody says something like you're saying, somebody wants a plumber, I immediately thought, I was like, oh yeah, I got a plumber.
I know that.
You weren't even really asking that. That was just an example. But yeah, that's, I go to that and I want to solve those problems for for other people. And it's very easy for me to put my focus on other people when I'm around them. So yeah, when I need to kind of think through things or figure stuff out, I tend to withdraw and go into a very internal place instead.
Which I think is another Taurus, Virgo, Gemini thing.
I have a Taurus moon. So.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what you were comfortable sharing with about your chart. But
I don't know all of it off the top of my head, but I know the big ones.
Yeah, and I haven't seen your chart, but I know those three: your sun, moon, and rising, and your Mars and Venus, and nodes. Okay.
You got a good idea. Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Yeah, I think when you're kind of fluttering about all of the time, I don't know. I think that's maybe that Taurus Gemini thing too. I think Taurus gets this reputation for being like slow and stubborn, but I think Taurus also knows when to move or when not to move or when they have the energy to do the thing. So there's also that like the lazy thing that Taurus, is it that I'm lazy or is it that I just don't have the energy to do it and to do it well? So let me rest or let me shut myself away or let me power down and turn into myself before I'm doing this with my hand, but I guess like go back out or flutter about again.
Right. Yeah. Having that time to land and recharge. Think of, thinking of like a little butterfly.
Yeah.
Flying all over the place, visiting all the flowers and stuff. And then it's got to go back to its favorite branch and like hang out there, rest its wings. I don't know if butterflies actually have to do that, but that's what's coming to mind. And then it can venture back out into the garden and pollinate again.
Yeah.
Because that's what Geminis do, right? In a positive expression of the sign, that energy, that archetype, they pollinate. They're going around from place to place, and they're the messengers, right? Because ruled by Mercury, the messenger. So they're taking the information from people and giving it to other people. It's why they want to have all those different groups.
Absolutely.
And I think with thinking of Virgo and the service aspect of it is that's how we can be of service. Is we can connect those people. We can bring in information from one group to another, and be that go between.
And we go places that not everybody's willing to go, I think, with her. I mean, Gemini, Hermes went into the underworld. That's not everybody has access to that, first of all. But then even if you do have access, are you comfortable going? Are you able to do that?
That's what the Scorpios in my life are for. They can go there, and I can spread their information after they live in the world, and I can visit them in that way.
They report back to you.
That's a scary place down there. I don't want to go there by myself.
Scorpio's your third house. Do you have any planets in that?
I don't think I have any planets in Scorpio. Cory would know, but I don't believe so. But I tend to have people in my life who have Scorpio moons, a lot of Scorpio moons, and people close to me, which is great for them, and more power to them. Great, awesome, but it's not me.
I'm gonna stay light and airy and up here.
Stay light and airy up here, and you do that, and I'll get the information I need from it. Yeah,
fair enough. That's fair. How are we doing?
We got one time for maybe one more quick one. If you have.
Let me get back to the right screen here. Those are all the audience. I have all the questions I have from the audience, but I'm curious. I don't think I've asked you this yet. What do you feel in we're grain of salt, right? We know you're not official astrologer, but what do you feel is the biggest kind of misconception about Mercury or Gemini or Virgo or Taurus? Because we went there today too. But
yeah, I'm most familiar with Gemini because that's kind of as far as my intro to, it's my sun sign, so it's the one I knew first, and so I'm kind of familiar with that. And it really surprised me when I heard that people don't like Geminis. Like, how do you not like Gemini? Geminis are great. They're not committing to anything. They're floating around. They're really fun. Like, you don't have to worry about anything because they'll be gone. And I think that the negative stereotype around that, right, is the two-faced, the liar, the inability to commit, all that kind of thing. And I think for this is what I say about Gemini, the two-faced Gemini. Both faces are real and believed in the moment. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. But like when I'm here today doing this, I'm not an astrologer. I don't know. I haven't read astrology a little bit. I've heard some about it, but today that's what I'm doing, and I'm fully doing it and fully invested in it. And then I can worry about it later. But in the moment, yeah, this is who I am, and this is what I believe, and I'm doing it. And again, I have that unearned confidence that I hope everyone can move through the world with the confidence of a mediocre white man in America, because it's a wonderful thing for that person, and does a lot of damage. But hopefully people can take that and use it for themselves. But I think that's all the time we have today. Mandy, thank you so much for coming in and giving your report and bringing the questions. And tune in next week for the Cosmic Dispatch, same time. And you can stay here on Radio Kingston for Radio Cake, which is coming up next. All right. Have a great week.
Bye, Brent. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speaker or guest and do not necessarily reflect